Today, on how it's made. Wooden barrels. Production's on a roll. Fire hydrants. We'll hose you down with details. Automotive seats. Making them is a cushy job. And cathode ray tubes. We monitor production. In the old days, wooden barrels stored all manner of goods for the simple reason that they were easy to move. If you couldn't lift them, you could roll them. Today, modern machinery has made barrels obsolete, except for storing fine wine and spirits. And so the time-honored tradition of barrel making lives on. These wooden barrels are for storing whiskey. They're made from American white oak cut into pieces called staves. The staves go into a planer that shaves them to about 2.5 centimeters thick. Next, a machine punches two 6mm holes on either side of each stave. Dowel pins made out of hickory, a very strong wood, go into these holes to hold the staves together. They take the staves, place them on a guide, and press them together. A smaller piece completes the shape. Now it's onto the rounder, a machine that cuts it into a circular shape. This creates the barrel's lid, or head as it's called. And since two heads are better than one, each barrel has a pair. The barrel head now goes onto a contraption called the char tunnel. Its gas burners scorch the wood. This charring not only changes how the natural wood looks, it also gives color, flavor, and aroma to the whiskey the barrel will hold. They coat the head's edges with liquid beeswax, which helps them set it snugly into the barrel body. They run the staves against this machine to narrow their ends. This gives the barrel its characteristic shape, with a smaller radius at the ends than in the middle. At the barrel raising station, a worker positions an iron hoop and starts to assemble the barrel inside it. He selects staves that vary in width in order to use as few as possible. This reduces the number of joints and potential leak points. He gently lassos the barrel together. If he pulls that dry wood too tight, it'll break into pieces. A loose hoop gives the wood room to expand. The barrels pass through a steam tunnel for about 15 minutes, adding moisture to the wood so it can flex without snapping. Workers pull out the barrel and remove the top and bottom hoops. They replace them with sturdier ones and hammer them in. Without these hoops, the barrel would spring apart like a jack-in-the-box. Next, two more hoops around the body. The wood groans from the intense pressure that forces the staves together. But there can't be any gaps between the staves, or else the barrel will leak. The barrels pass over a gas burner that blasts a flame inside each one to char its interior. Seconds later, water shoots into the barrel to put out the flames. An automated saw cuts a V-shaped notch into the top and bottom of each barrel. This is where the barrel head will slot in. A fan blows away the sawdust. Now a machine removes the iron hoop on each end. A worker pours in a gallon of water to cool the barrel, still hot from the charring process. Then he puts on a barrel head and a stronger, permanent iron hoop on both ends. Now machines remove the two iron body hoops and replace them as well with stronger ones. These barrels hold their shape by sheer pressure. There's not a drop of glue used to hold them together. That gallon of water is still inside the barrel. Workers drill a hole in the side. then plug it by hammering in a rubber stopper with a spout. An inspector checks the barrels for leaks, stamps it approved, and labels it with a barcode for inventory. Then they remove the stopper. The water, turned to steam because of the heat, shoots out. The barrels are now ready to go on to the distillery, where they'll get their fill of some fine Kentucky whiskey. Fire hydrants have been in use for more than 200 years. In the old days, their main purpose was to supply water to fight fires, but they also provided the public with a handy water supply. Fire crews rely on the nearest hydrant to be ready at a moment's notice to help them douse flames whenever they break out. Fire hydrants are essential to every community. They need to be instantly recognizable, easily accessible, and simple to operate. The ones in residential areas are designed to deliver no less than an impressive 5,700 liters per minute. The hydrant making process starts with recycled scrap iron, along with steel and raw iron. Using a magnetic crane, workers load the metals into a furnace and melt them at 1,538 degrees Celsius. This turns the scrap metal into molten iron. Then they transfer the molten iron into a remote-controlled ladle and empty it into an automated pouring system. To cast the hydrants, workers first make two-part molds by compressing a mixture of sand and bonding materials. One part, called the mold, forms the hydrant's exterior shape, while the other part, called the core, forms the interior shape. An automatic core setter positions a core in each mold. Then a conveyor advances the mold under the pouring box, which fills the cavity between the mold and core with molten iron. After the iron cools and solidifies, the molds enter a tumbling barrel. As they revolve, the sand gradually disintegrates, freeing the iron casting inside. Workers drill and thread the hydrant castings to prepare them for assembly. Then they pre-assemble and paint them the color the customer requested. The fire hydrant's internal workings, called the valve assembly, allow water to flow through when opened. A series of rubber O-rings on the main valve will prevent leaks when the hydrant's closed. Now the hydrant is ready for final assembly. Workers attach the nozzle section to the top of the hydrant barrel and attach nozzle cap chains with a crimping tool. Using a torque wrench, they attach cast iron safety rings. These rings are designed to disengage the top from the bottom of the hydrant, so it doesn't get damaged if a vehicle hits it. Workers clamp the water main connector into place and pressurize the hydrant to normal city pressure to check for leaks. Using a hoist, they lower the pre-assembled nozzle section over the stem and fasten it to the water main connector with stainless steel bolts. They lower the bonnet into place, bolt it to the nozzle section, then open the hydrant for a high-pressure test. They turn the operating nut to allow water to flow through. Before conducting this test, they force out the air inside the hydrant with water. Workers transfer the finished hydrant to a pallet and apply final paint touch-ups. Some fire hydrants that were installed more than 100 years ago are still in use today. When it comes to the seating in our cars, perhaps we should sit up and take notice. It's come a long way since the car was invented in the 19th century. Back then, seats had no springs and not much padding, so you could feel every bump on the road. In today's car seats, we have a much easier ride. Padded and belted, modern car seats are a real comfort zone. They manufacture the components separately and ship them to this factory for assembly. They arrive as needed on the production line, so there's not a lot of stockpiling. It means the flow of parts into this plant is constant and organized because they make over 400 seat variations here. They cart the parts to the assembly line in the order they're needed. On this assembly line, there are 60 workers, each with specific tasks to perform. They receive a build ticket for each part and scan it. This allows a central computer to track production and verify that the right parts are being used to build the right seat. An operator tucks the seat warmer pad and cables into the cushioning for the bottom half of the seat. She loosely places the fabric cover over the assembly and attaches it with wire. Then it's over to the next station, where the operator completes the upholstery job. Each worker has just 88 seconds to perform his or her tasks, so there's no sitting down on this job. They install a seat warmer system on the backrest section of the seat and cover it. They slide an airbag into a special sleeve. These seats come with springs that clip onto the metal framework to provide lumbar support. They fit the cushion assembly on the springed framework and pull it tight. They smooth out any wrinkles. This is called finessing. And then they install the headrest. Next, they tackle the lower framework. They equip it with a mechanism to adjust the height of the seat. Electrical connectors go in next. Then they bolt the lower framework to the cushion backrest. They attach the pretensioner apparatus, which locks the seat belt in position. Then wire the connector box. They fit the lower cushioning on the framework and add the recliner spring. A plastic valance makes it all look neater. It's time to take this driver's seat for a test run. They hook it up to a power source and check if the airbag and seat warmer are operational. They iron out all the wrinkles because the automaker will reject any seat that's less than perfect. And then they slide and tilt the seat to make sure the adjustment mechanisms are working properly. They assemble the rear seats using the same techniques. Again, each operator gets exactly 88 seconds to complete his or her job. When you add it all up, an entire seat set takes just 62 minutes to assemble. Before they ship the seat set to the car factory, they snap a photo as a production record. It proves each set was in perfect condition when it left the factory. Now these automotive seats are ready to hit the road. They strap them onto delivery pallets and load them into a big truck, 60 sets at a time. They'll arrive at the car plant just as the vehicles they're made for are rolling off the assembly line. Once they're installed, all you'll need to do is sit back and enjoy the ride. The CRT, short for cathode ray tube, produces the images that we see on our TVs and computer monitors, the ones that aren't LCD or plasma, that is. Believe it or not, the cathode ray tube was invented back in 1879. A CRT is made up of two main components, a large glass bulb and an electron gun. CRTs start with a molded glass bulb. First, workers remove microscopic debris using a high-pressure water rinse. Then spray hydrofluoric acid to clean the glass at an atomic level. They pour a phosphor solution into the bulb. Phosphor is an organic compound that emits light when struck by electrons. The phosphor particles settle and form a chemical bond with the bulb face. Workers pour off the excess solution and clamp the bulb over a nozzle that sprays clear lacquer. The centrifugal force guarantees an even coat over the phosphor to protect it for the next step. He paints a conductive coating over the anode button, which will provide a flow path for the electrons that'll light up the phosphor particles. Next, a worker drops an aluminum pellet into a tungsten coil. He places the bulb over a vacuum device and draws out the air. Then he applies an electrical current to the coil. It evaporates the aluminum pellet, which spreads a mirror-like coating on the inside of the bulb. Now they heat the bulb to 218 degrees Celsius for 1 hour. This bakes out the lacquer and any trace of moisture. Using a high-temperature flame, a worker aligns and fuses a glass neck to the bulb. Then he paints it with the same conductive coating. This assembly is part of the electron gun that goes inside the bulb. It shoots electrons at the bulb's phosphor particles. That lights them up, creating the images we see on screen. Workers stack the grid cups that focus the electrons on the screen. Then, using beading glass, align and fuse them into position. Robots heat and affix the beading glass to assemble the electron gun components. They cool off the gun with pressurized air. Once cool, a worker builds up the gun and inserts the completed gun assembly into the bulb. Next, he positions the bulb on a glass-blowing lathe and cuts excess glass from the neck. Using a graphite paddle and a high-temperature torch, he mates the glass neck to the electron gun's stem. This ceramic heating coil melts that green glass pellet to keep the bulb under vacuum. The tube is heated to 400 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, and once again, a vacuum is drawn. To minimize image flicker over the tube's lifespan, workers condition the bulb using a high-voltage coil. It smooths any rough surfaces that might remain on the electron gun. Finally, workers apply electrical connections to the electron gun to bring the cathode ray tube to life. If you have any comments about the show, or if you'd like to suggest topics for future shows, drop us a line at www.howitismade.net.